This is episode 8 of Pixelated Audio. No Street Fighter has ever seen fighters fighting like this.
What? So where'd you come up with that intro?
I just read it from the cover of the box.
Oh, man, you gotta love that marketing.
Yeah.
Anyways, welcome to Pixelated Audio, a video game music and retro gaming podcast. And today we're looking at a fighting game, specifically from a franchise that pretty much consumed our lives in the 80s and 90s called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Tournament Fighters.
I'm Brian, and with me is James. And you might be wondering why we're checking this game out of all the Ninja Turtle games. And honestly, it's probably the one we have the least amount of memories with.
Yeah, and we wanted to pick a game that we could kind of single out.
Plus, all the other Turtles games we have plans for down the road, so...
Yeah, you don't hear about this one too often, so we thought it'd be fun to bring it up and check out the music.
Yeah, and the song that brought in the show was Tournament Fighters Part 1 for the Super Nintendo.
It's such an awesome track. I really love that build to that like Turtles sound, and then it just kind of goes off and has some fun with it.
Yeah, no, that track is really cool, and it's different from the other versions that we're gonna kind of look at, and the other tracks that we're gonna look at, and it really has that kind of build up, and I love it. It's short. I think it's the title screen, or it's just starting music, maybe.
Yeah, I'm not
intro.
sure where it fits, but yeah, it's just super fun, and it just kind of got me excited to play the game.
Yeah, I know, it's super fun. So for this episode, we're going to talk about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Tournament Fighters for the Super NES, the Sega Genesis Mega Drive, and the NES version as well.
Even though that the titles are the same, they're essentially 3 different games. So we're going to focus mostly on the Super NES and the Genesis versions.
But we've got some stuff for the NES version lined up too.
And this was a major marketing opportunity for the franchise because the 3rd live-action movie had just come out.
And it didn't do so hot either.
Right. I remember not liking the movie or the toys very much. But now we have 3 new games across top-selling platforms and a new toy line to go with them.
We're also in the 7th season of the cartoon at this time, and there's no signs of it slowing down. So anyways, how do we want to do this?
I guess we could go chronologically.
Sure.
So its first release was on the Sega Genesis in September of 1993, and shortly after that in December was the release of the Super NES version, both developed and published by Konami.
And these aren't ports either. Like we said, very different games, and Konami was kind of known for doing completely different versions of the same game on different platforms.
Right.
At this point in the early to mid-90s, they had their hands dipped in pretty much, every platform that was out making money.
Well, they had some stuff on the 3DO.
Oh, God, that's right.
Yeah, so even some consoles that weren't making money.
Right. But platforms aside, Tournament Fighters is basically that across the board. It's a fighting game that pits both heroes and villains together. And this took a different approach to what we've seen for the Turtles before, and Konami was kind of riding on the heels of Capcom's success, bringing Street Fighter to the home consoles.
But before we get into the characters, gameplay, and all that good stuff, let's fire up some music from the Genesis version.
The game was composed by Miki Higashino, and she is awesome. She was with Konami from the very early years, doing arcade games like Gradius, ER Kung Fu, and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles arcade game. She also did Vandal Hearts for PS1, both Suikoden 1 and 2 for the PS1, and all these games I really, really love, and she's just got a lot more stuff too.
She also used the alias Miki-chan for a lot of games too. But what's really cool is in an interview, she actually said that Tournament Fighters was one of the most fun games that she worked on.
Out of all those impressive titles, that's super awesome.
I know, right? I would have never guessed. But anyways, on the list for the first block, we have Krang Stage, Leonardo Stage, and Triceraton Stage. So let's fire those up.
That was Krang Stage, Leonardo Stage, and Triceraton Stage, composed by Miki Higashino for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Tournament Fighters on the Sega Genesis.
You're right. These are some great tracks.
Yeah, I know. She's awesome. She's really awesome. Like super funky.
Yeah.
Like, all of the tracks in some way or another she incorporates that funk sound in. That first track, Krang Stage, you would think it's got this really, I mean, just from what we know in the cartoons, you think it's this really like, industrial kind of sound, like in the Technodrome or something. No, it's super fun.
Yeah, but it's like his song I thought had a bit of a menacing sound to the funkiness. Like,
the bass is really crunchy. It's really splat bass. I love it.
Yeah, no, I thought it fit with him pretty good, especially after hearing the other tracks and how I feel like a lot of these tracks are really tailored to the kind of the personality or the feeling that each character gives. Like the Leonardo Stage, I thought had a little bit more of a refined, controlled sound to it, but it was still kind of had that funky beat, like you had mentioned. But I felt it fit like with his personality, where he's very controlled and kind of rigid.
I can see that. Yeah. And then Triceraton, his stage it starts off really. It has that kind of like echoing kind of sound, and then you hear these bass drops. And we were talking about how cool that sounded.
Yeah.
When we were listening to him, and I love how it picks up. You get this really distorted bass again, and it gets really crunchy. And no, it's a good track. They're all three. The Genesis soundtrack is awesome. So.
Yeah, no, it's really great. And with his stage, the Triceraton stage, those bass drops, to me, it kind of echoed how big he is, and like that he like almost like those are his footsteps, and that he's a big guy.
Yeah, he's huge,
a giant fighter.
Right.
But he was always really cool. I always liked him a lot, and so I really liked that track a lot for this game.
One more thing that I want to bring up about Leonardo Stage before we move on. I wrote down here pilot wings, and the reason why is because there's a part in, I want to say it's like 30 seconds or so in, it really has that pilot wings kind of sound that is kind of echoing off each other, and that was the first thing that popped in my mind. So,
no, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So the story is kind of laid out like this: Master Splinter is in the sewers meditating when the turtles show up. But he notices right off the bat that there's something wrong, and actually he finds out that they're clones made by Krang and ends up getting kidnapped.
He seems to be getting kidnapped a lot for the one that basically trained the turtles and taught them everything they know.
Yeah, but he's kind of old, and he always seems to be outnumbered.
Okay, I'll give him that. So the real turtles actually have to travel to Dimension X to get him back, and really that's the whole story. You want to read off the characters?
Yeah, let me see here. For the Genesis, we have 8 playable characters. There's Raphael, Leonardo, Donatello, Michelangelo, April O'Neil, Casey Jones, Ray Fillet, who I actually had the action figure for, and he was always one of my favorites.
I still have some of the original action figures in the box from the first line of toys.
Yeah, I know. They're pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Anyway, they also had an original character for this game named Sisyphus.
And there's a few bosses too, Triceraton, Krang's android, and Karai.
I thought it was really cool to see Karai play such a big role in this game because I feel like she's a character people don't know much about. And in recent books, she's changed quite a bit, but in the beginning, she started out as the leader of the Japanese chapter of the Foot, and she actually outranked Shredder.
Oh, that's awesome. So in single-player mode, you travel through Dimension X battling the clones created by Krang as well as the bosses. There's also a tournament mode where you can fight 88 matches. Yes, 88 matches with 1 health bar.
Man, that is so crazy. I would really love to see a video of someone beating that.
I'm sure there's a playthrough somewhere. But anyways, obviously there's a 2-player versus mode and a practice mode.
The 3-button layout on the Genesis was kind of limiting for a fighting game. 2 buttons are used for attacks and 1 for a taunt. And they were able to get around this limitation a little bit by integrating the D-pad and a button press at the same time to create different attacks and power moves.
If your health bar gets too low, it starts flashing and you can pull off these really insane special attacks.
Kind of like a last resort?
I think so. The problem is I could never actually get them to work. Like, really, I tried.
Yeah, same here.
I think they might be impossible.
I think so.
But we have a few more tracks to play. So first up is Character Select, Donatello's Stage, April O'Neil's Stage, and let's have a listen to those, and we'll be right back.
That was Characters Select, Donatello Stage, and April O'Neil Stage, composed by Miki Higashino for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Tournament Fighters on the Sega Genesis.
Those are some awesome tracks. Like every single one of those is, this is obviously a tailored list that we like these. We like these songs, so we put them in there.
Yeah, this was my favorite block from this game so far. I really love them.
Me too, especially that last track. But we'll get into that in a sec. That the character select screen, it has this really heavy bass. There's a lot of funk, and then every once in a while, like if you listen carefully, there's that kind of hint of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles theme,
right?
That da 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 da. Like they throw it in there, like very subtly, but they kind of hide it from you. And
a lot of these tracks kind of have that very subtly mixed in. They didn't hit you over the head with the Turtles sound, which I really liked because it kind of gives you a break from hearing the cartoon so much and all that in the movies, all that sound. So it's like something totally new.
It didn't sound like a remix of the Turtles theme, like redone in like 30 different ways. So no, it's really cool. Donatello Stage, wow, super funky again. There's like a ton of like Higashino is doing the best she can to approximate that electric organ sound,
right?
And it sounds really cool on the Genesis.
No, yeah, I really liked it. My notes for this song when I was listening to it, it was just wow. I really like this track a lot. It's super cool and
very expressive.
And there's like these little like tech sounds in it that to me made it feel a little bit technology based for Donatello, which I really loved. That she really tailored the songs to the character's personality.
Right, underneath all that like Genesis slap bass sound. But the last track, April O'Neil, that's my favorite track in this game.
Yeah, I can totally see why.
It's my favorite track. Like it's so cool. Like there is that ovation you hear right in the beginning, this wow, that's really awesome. And then it goes into these little episodes inside the track that the trumpets are playing, and then it cuts over to like the woodwinds, and it kind of goes back and forth. I love that. I love this track a lot.
Yeah, really cool. This song has a lot of variety to it, which was really awesome.
Yeah, there's a few other things. Like this game is just really hard.
Yeah, crazy hard.
It's really hard. So having this upbeat, music kind of pumps you up, and it's funny because I turned the game on at like the lowest difficulty, and I could barely get through it.
Yeah, same here. I was playing it, and I didn't expect it to be so hard, and kind of got a little frustrated. And I turned down the difficulty, thinking, okay, this will make it a little easier. I turned it all the way down. Nope, it didn't seem like it made a difference. It was so funny. Hard.
I'm glad I'm not the only one, because when we're like playing these games like to prepare for this episode, I was like, man, like I wonder if James like was able to get through this, because like I'm having a tough time.
Yeah, and this is the version I would have had for this game, because I grew up with the Sega Genesis, and I would have probably immediately been pretty upset. Like this is crazy hard. I didn't even think that given any extra time playing it would have made a difference for me.
The graphics are okay. The animation's kind of choppy, and it just doesn't feel like it was optimized very well for the hardware.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the Turtles games up to this point seemed like the graphics were really awesome, and it kind of had like the not its A game feel to it.
I felt like the color palette was a little bit darker and a little more fuzzy than not like the graphics were worse, but like more just like the colors didn't blend very well.
Well, and I think for me the sprites weren't as well designed. They felt kind of rubbery and kind of bland, like not as defined looking. They were kind of almost felt generic to me.
Yeah, but the music is where this game shines, and it works really, really well for this system. Turtles is something that kind of, it's fast paced, it's a pump up game, and the synth chip in the Genesis, there's a lot of, debate. Like some people really don't like that sound, but there's some games that it works really well for. And this is one of them, like, Streets of Rage and those other kind of like these specific, beat 'em up scenarios or fighting scenarios. The Genesis really pulls ahead here. And I think, and it's something like The Legend of Zelda or Super Mario or Secret of Mana, Chrono Trigger, that would not work on the Genesis. That's works for the Super Nintendo.
Yeah, it totally had games that its sound would have worked really well for, and I could totally see what you're saying here. Anyways, but I think it's time to maybe move on to the Super Nintendo version.
Yeah, sounds good. So this version features two modes that took a different take on those that we saw in the Genesis. There's a tournament mode and a story mode. In tournament mode, April O'Neil's news station, Channel 6, has set up a fighting tournament with different prizes and money as a reward. Could you imagine our news station setting something up like this?
No, but maybe I'd start watching the news more if they did.
So the Turtles are in the sewer sitting on the couch watching TV and notice that Shredder is one of the applicants. They figured, something's got to be up with this. So Splinter tells them to join the tournament and figure out Shredder's motive.
Story mode starts with the Turtles finding out that Splinter and April have been captured by a group called the Shredder Elite, led by Karai. So in order to save them, they have to travel around in the Turtle Blimp and defeat a bunch of bad guys to collect info.
Yeah, in this mode, you play as one of the 4 Turtles only, none of the supporting characters.
Right, but otherwise the playable characters in this game are obviously the 4 Turtles, Shredder, War, Wingnut, Chrome Dome, Armagon, and Asuka. 2 non-playable bosses include the Rat King and Karai, but I was kind of poking around on GameFAQs and saw that by using cheat codes, you can actually play as the Rat King and Karai, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Just to make note, though, Asuka is an original character for the game, and she's also kind of a fan favorite, I guess. But it's funny because in the US release of the game, they actually had to tone down and censor her design a bit.
Yeah, basically adding some shorts where her bikini was in the Japanese version. But let's get into our first block. This game has 3 credited composers, all of which were working for Konami.
Yeah, there's Kazuhiko Uehara, who had also done work on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Turtles in Time, The Legend of the Mystical Ninja, and Gradius 3. Hideto Inoue, who had done work on the Genesis port of Sunset Riders and did Ninja Turtles Hyperstone Heist, and Harumi Ueko, who did Castlevania Dracula X. And we commonly see Ueko paired up with Uehara in projects like, we mentioned, Turtles in Time, Mystical Ninja, and so on.
First up is Cafeteria, Enter the Tournament, Pirate Ship, and Turtle Power. So let's take a listen, and we'll be back right after the break.
That was Cafeteria, Enter the Tournament, Pirate Ship, and Turtle Power, composed by Kazuhiko Uehara, Hideto Inoue, and Harumi Ueko for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Tournament Fighters for the Super Nintendo.
Super 90s sound to it.
Yeah.
And I can really see the connection between Turtles and Time as well with that first track, Cafeteria.
No, I 100% agree with you. Like, there are a lot of subtleties that were borrowed, I'm sure, from those other games. I'm sure that the composers too, or not the composers, but the designers were heavily influenced by those games and played a lot of them, I mean, being all Konami games anyway.
Right,
so,
and on the same system, and so not much of a time gap, and they even has a little bit of a similar look. But Enter the Tournament was a track that I was a little bit surprised by. It was a really cool track. I liked it a lot. Yeah,
again, like same thing we saw in the Genesis. There's a lot of like that slap bass approximation, and all of a sudden, like, I was thinking, like, I couldn't help but think the sexy saxophone man, like, playing in there. It just sounds like, hearing that saxophone sound, playing, just this guy just jamming out with like a tie on.
Yeah, no, that's pretty awesome. I really like these. Pirate Ship was another one that I really liked quite a bit. I don't know if it was maybe because of the background or whatnot, but I really liked the theme with that giant squid, and Armagon is a really cool character, I thought. So I thought this track was really special. In both games, the Genesis and the Super Nintendo version, the backgrounds are awesome. They're actually awesome across the board, and right. They're different, and they have unique parts and stuff. It's cool because they're all, I think it started with the Genesis version, right? They used levels that you could actually break. Right, yeah, they had change. Some destructible parts. Yeah.
Right, and that made its way to the Super Nintendo version as well.
Yeah, which is always cool to see an integrated background and things like that, which is just made the game a little bit more fun. Yeah, in Pirate Ship, do you remember what like you could like break in that level? No, I'm not quite sure. I remember seeing like the tentacles moving around and stuff, and so I was a little distracted by that. I thought it was just really neat. Yeah, but there's a lot of orchestra hits that you hear in that Pirate Ship level, a lot in that track, and it's just like that bow 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 over and over and over. The Super Nintendo is notorious for that, and they really used all that they could out of those sounds. So yeah, no, it's a very Super Nintendo sound to the whole album, which is really cool. Yeah, moving on to Turtle Power. When I was listening to this, the first thing that popped in my head was Rainbow Road. I couldn't help it. Like, it just sounded like... Yeah, with the title Turtle Power, I kind of expected something a little bit more recognizable to the series. Like the but yeah, something like that. But didn't hear it at all. That was really cool. I thought it was kind of, mellow-ish, which I really liked. It was a nice difference. Yeah, there's a lot of brass, again, that they use. It's a fun track. It's short. It's like a minute long, but I'm glad we threw it in there. And anything else? No. So let's move on. Konami pulled off a really good fighting system this time around. The movements in the game are really nice with fluent animation, and now with the Super NES controller, they can utilize the 4 face buttons for 2 standard attacks and 2 fierce attacks. But it shares some similarities with the Genesis version for things like throws, combo moves, and specials. Yeah, and for specials, there's this mutagen meter that sits right below your health bar. And when you get hit or you land attacks, this meter builds up, and when it's full, you can use those for specials. Right, and it's pretty clear that there's a lot of ideas taken from the previous Turtle games. I think the director was Yasuo Okuda? Yeah, Okuda. Yeah, and he really liked the animated series and the comics and wanted to do the game justice by bringing the whole Turtle scope, if you will, into play, really trying to recapture certain elements even from the original NES games. But before I forget, I want to bring up the box art a little bit, which I feel is another way that they tied everything into the Turtle universe. And they did this by bringing in Chris Allen, who was the comic artist, or one of the main comic artists on the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle adventure books, as well as some of the tales of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And I thought it was just really cool that they incorporated him into these games by doing all the box arts, which I thought was neat too, that each box art had a different turtle featured on it with a different boss that was specific to that actual game. So he did the box art for each of the Turtles, so the NES, Super NES, and Genesis ones? Right, yeah. And like I said, each game had a different turtle on the cover and had a different bad guy that was specifically from that game, which I thought was just a really cool idea. That's awesome. That's really cool. Anyways, are you ready for another music set? Yeah. Let me see what we have next on the list. So we have Karai's Letter, Scrapyard, Sky Palace, and Noh Stage. And aside from Karai's Letter, they're all stage music, but there's really a lot of diversity. So let's take a listen, and we'll be right back.
from the Super Nintendo version of Tournament Fighters, that was Karai's Letter, Scrapyard, Sky Palace, and Noh Stage, all composed by Kazuhiko Uehara, Hideto Inoue, and Harumi Ueko.
Yeah, for that first song, Karai's Letter, I remember where that fits into the game. You actually get a letter from her telling, this is how you're going to get someone back, and I have them. And I thought like the song was really intense and energetic for getting a mysterious letter, because I don't even think they knew who she was at this point.
Yeah, so, like it starts out like it kind of weird and slow, and then it builds up and it's super fast. And I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah, and then it ends kind of darkly a little bit, but it's a great track. I just felt
cool.
Like it could have fit into the like this. Where's this letter coming from? Who is this? But
yeah, it could have been more mysterious, I think, rather than like let's start fighting now.
Yeah,
but the next track, Scrapyard, is it's a longer track out of all of the other ones, and it's a stage song again, and I like this. It starts. I want to say, it's really fast action, but it's weird how the composers played with this track, because it's like they brought in every single instrument. Like at some point, there's an electric organ breakdown, then like this, trumpet, then like kind of a saxophone approximation, then like a keyboard, then guitar, and then like a bass, and it's really intense.
Yeah, this track has a lot of variation to it, and like you said, almost like little segments where it's like each instrument kind of gets a little part. But I mean, I felt it still had an overall sound that worked together, but yeah, it is a longer track with a lot of variation to it.
Sky Palace, the one thing that I kept hearing over and over is the guitar track, that electric guitar. It's the same riff, and it's played throughout the whole song. And there's little tiny breaks where they kind of change it around, but basically that guitar riff just plays. It's cool. It's really cool how they do it. And there's it's a minute long track, and they have a lot of energy. All these tracks, like seriously, they tire me out.
Yeah, no, it's another good one that's very high energy, and unlike Scrapyard, it doesn't have as much variation, but it's not bad that it doesn't. It kind of really gets you pumped up and ready to go.
And for a fighting game, that's what you want.
Yeah, exactly what you want.
And Noh Stage, this is the biggest oddball in the group.
Yeah.
But it does get going. It does pick up.
Right.
So it starts out. It's Noh Stage, right? So this is Noh based on the the Japanese play form. These rice paper walls and lanterns and the whole 9 yards.
Right.
And so it starts off very, I want to say, ethnic in a sense, and then moves towards this more like action paced type of track, and you need that for a fighting level anyway. So
and
it's good that they pick it up.
Right, and like you said, it definitely is the most different out of all these tracks, and for me, after hearing it, it kind of made me wish that for this album they kind of broke away from that Ninja Turtle sound that we heard from Turtles in Time and stuff like that, and kind of played around with a little bit more, like how I feel this track did.
Yeah, and the first thing that I thought of, I was thinking, oh man, this is like Samurai Shodown.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but it does pick up really fast. So let's take a quick sidestep here and talk about the NES version.
So a few months later, in February of 1994, Konami made a brave attempt to bring a version of the game to the NES, and it was actually one of the last few licensed games to come out on the system.
Yeah, not only that, it was also Konami's last NES game.
The other games had pretty basic stories, but for this, it's even simpler. Splinter gets captured again by Shredder, and the Turtles decide to challenge each other to a tournament to see who will single-handedly take him down.
That's it. Like only one sentence. I love it. And they also trimmed down the roster a bit too. There's only 7 characters: the 4 Turtles, Shredder, Casey Jones, and Hothead. And graphically, it kind of resembles the first Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game on the NES.
For a system with only 2 buttons and limited hardware, it's not really that bad. It's kind of boring, but it's fun to pop on with a friend.
Yeah, and the controls are pretty responsive, but there's little variation in attacks for obvious reasons.
And a really odd thing for this game is there's this little machine that flies by with Splinter's face on it, and it drops like this red ball, and anyone can pick it up, and this allows you to kind of throw fireballs. It's really weird.
That's what those were for. Oh, I could never figure it out. I didn't really spend too much time on this game. There's some slowdowns and sprite tearing every now and then, but we got to keep in mind that the NES didn't really get games like this. Well, 2-player, fighting games like ever.
Other than Urban Champion, I can't think of anything, but given what they had to work with, it was a decent attempt.
If you have a means to play it, I mean, check it out, I guess, but you're not really missing much. And yeah, just go play Urban Champion instead.
Now, the soundtrack isn't that bad, though, and Konami really always delivers in this regard.
Yeah, we have a few tracks that we picked out that are pretty cool. I can't really say that for the whole soundtrack, but there's a few that really, really stand out.
So there's 2 composers for this game. Junichiro Kaneda, who surprisingly did the soundtrack for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2 Battle Nexus on the GameCube, PlayStation 2, and Xbox. And Ayako Nishigaki, who worked for Konami, but did a lot more behind-the-scenes sound work than actual composition.
Yeah, from the NES version, we have Sewer, Downtown, Staff, and Intro 3, Heroes United. It's pretty rad stuff, so let's check it out. That was Sewer, Downtown, Staff, Intro 3, Heroes United, composed by Junichiro Kaneda and Ayako Nishigaki for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Tournament Fighters on the NES.
If I have to be honest, I think these are some of my favorite tracks in the episode so far.
Oh, totally.
Sewer is so insanely awesome. When I first heard the track, I just couldn't believe it. I was like, wow, this is so great.
It's so Konami. Like it just it's the essence of the company, and they throw it into the game, and I love it. It's really fun. The Downtown, the next track on there, it has what we see in a lot of the early Ninja Turtle games with the pitch bending. So it's like da 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 da, and it has those bends, and I love when they do that with the NES hardware. It's so fun, and it kind of has that Surf's Up kind of Ninja Turtle thing. And I played a lot of the original NES game, so my memories of the music and stuff are like clear cut in my head.
Pretty hardwired.
And so hearing these tracks with the NES hardware, it just immediately makes me think of the original game, and they brought a lot of that to the table. It's really cool.
Yeah, no, I can totally see that. And this song has such great variation to it, like the little notes here and there, and then like these little riffs and stuff. It's just like Downtown and Sewer are just amazing.
And like those trills they do in Sewer, where it's like 50 different notes, and like
I love it. I love it on that hardware. It's just so great.
No, it's really cool. And Staff, this is just almost too awesome for this game.
Yeah,
the track for Staff, it's like the longest track out of all the tracks in this game.
Right.
And I don't know if anybody actually ever saw this, but it's really cool. And
like you said, it's the game was all right. Like I didn't hate it or anything like that. Honestly, I think I might have preferred it to the Sega Genesis version, but it's got its downfall. But the music is just so insane. Like I just love it so much.
Yeah. And I mean, a lot of people have missed out on this game too, because it came out after the next gen, for the time, hardware. And, by this point, people were like, do we need more NES when, a lot of people moved on?
Right. I think I remember reading that only 8 games came out for the NES after this one. So it's kind of like, this was very, very right at the end. Like,
late in the game. Yeah. It was almost like an afterthought. Like, hey, I think people still have these in their houses. Why don't we just see if we can get some cash out of them still and throw it in.
Slap that turtle's name on it and anybody's going to buy it.
Yeah. No, the last track, Intro 3, Heroes United, that's like 30 seconds of pure awesomeness. It's so cool. It's a really cool track. I think that... I picked out like 4 tracks and had you listen to them, and you were like, oh, these are all great. Let me hear the other ones. And I played a few others for you, and you can see that we kind of soloed out like the best ones on here. There's a lot of tracks like the same song but sped up and on repeat, and it's not really doing anything new and fun. It's kind of like, it's more like Mario's Panic Mode where you're running out of time.
Right.
So a lot of the other tracks don't really have the same value to them, I think. But
yeah, so we picked what we felt was the best, and I mean they are amazing.
Yeah, and the composers did an excellent job. So good job, guys.
Yeah.
Anyways, let's move back over to the Super Nintendo for a little bit before we wrap up.
So we have some more tracks lined up, but there's actually a few more features that we left out that we should probably touch on. You want to explain them?
Like the options menu?
And the watch mode.
It's actually a pretty cool feature of the game, and solely on the Super Nintendo. Basically, it's just an option screen where you can change the difficulty and stuff like any other fighter, but you can also change the speed of the game. And what this does is it actually turns the game into like a hyper fighting game, and it's really rad.
Obviously taken from Street Fighter games, but no, it's really cool to add to the mix.
Yeah, and after playing at high speed for like 10 minutes, I had a really hard time going back and playing it on like the normal speed. It's really fun though.
Also, from the title screen, there was this watch mode. I have no idea why this had its own option, but basically you get to watch 2 computer fighters go head to head. Not really my idea of fun, but I guess they thought people would like to do it. I don't know.
Yeah, I'd just rather play the game.
Yeah, that's probably the consensus, but I don't know. Maybe they want to do some betting or something like that.
Yeah, like I'll put like 5 down on Raphael. And see how it goes this round. Anyways, we got some music to play. It's our last block before we wrap up, starting with Mount Olympus, Supreme Dominance, and Tournament Fighters Part 2. Let's fire those up. was Mount Olympus, Supreme Dominance, and Tournament Fighters Part 2, composed by Kazuhiko Uehara, Hideto Inoue, and Harumi Ueko for Tournament Fighters on the Super Nintendo.
I spent a lot of time on Mount Olympus fighting and...
Hiking up or...
No, the track, I didn't remember it like this, even though I just played it yesterday, but it just felt so different. But I really like the track. It's really great. It's got a really cool sound to it with some variation, but for some reason, it's not how I remember it.
Yeah, the percussion is really intense. A little bit too much sometimes for, fighting game. They want to keep that, like we said numerous times, but I could use a little bit more mellow percussion, I think. The next track, Supreme Dominance, another really cool track with a lot of echoing and harmonics every now and then, and it's kind of more of a generic track. It doesn't really, I don't know where this fits in the game. It's just Supreme Dominance. It's not like a level. It's I don't know, maybe one of you guys know and can let us know in the comments. But it's a fun track, and it's cool.
Right. It had some parts in it, not the whole song, but it definitely had some parts in it to me that felt very like 90s movie montage. I don't know. I'm a big sucker for 90s movie montage music. So those parts of the track I really, really enjoyed.
Yeah. Tournament Fighters Part 2. It's kind of like that, has that build up. It's almost like the intro that we came in with. It has that build up, and it's really fast paced, and it has a really Turtles feel to it. I like that. It's
right.
really cool.
I kind of thought almost like Turtles meet Punch Out, but you had said Super Soccer was something you felt was influenced by that, or sounded like this. So I was like, oh yeah, that's great.
I mean, granted, we did that show a while back now, but I still have it in my mind every now and then. And the first thing I was thinking was like, oh man, this is like Super Soccer jamming.
Yeah, no, it was a great track that used the Super Nintendo sound really well. I really liked it in this song.
Yeah, no, there's some cool instruments, variations, and stuff that they use, and I like it. It's fun. It's a minute long. Pop it in, enjoy. Anyways, to kind of recap what we covered here, we covered 3 games. Well, 3 versions of one game. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Tournament Fighters for the Super Nintendo, composed by Kazuhiko Uehara, Hideto Inoue, and Harumi Ueko. We also covered the Genesis and Mega Drive, composed by Miki Higashino. And lastly, the NES, composed by Junichiro Kaneda and Ayako Nishigaki.
And I'm sure a lot of you would agree that the Super Nintendo version is probably the way to go.
Yeah, if you're going to play any of the fighters, I'd recommend definitely the Super Nintendo version. The NES version, it's more or less kind of like an afterthought. In the Genesis, they just kind of missed a bunch of pegs there. So
yeah.
Anyways, hands down for the Super NES. We give them all a shot, and each have some positives and negative points. But yeah, I think the Super NES is more of a complete package. So that's the show. Thanks for listening. You can follow us on Twitter at Pixelated Audio, subscribe to us on iTunes or Stitcher, and feel free to leave us a review.
You can also visit us online at pixelatedaudio.com, where we keep all of our show notes and track lists. You can also leave us a comment, and that would be great to hear what you guys think about the episodes.
Yeah, and if anything else, check out the episode artwork James has been doing for all of our episodes. It's really well done.
Thanks. I'm having a lot of fun doing it.
So the track taking us out is Star Turtles 2, The Wrath of Mann, from a group of remixers. Let's see here. There's Carbo Hydro M, Omega Drive, Snappleman, The Snugglemen, and Wildcat, which is part of an Overclock remix album that came out in April of 2014 called Shell Shocked. Totally awesome. Check it out. Download it. Enjoy.